a century after scientists began studying carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases continue to rise, and so do the concerns about the impact on our Earth.
I think you really have to bank on the fact that the world is warming, and it's warming because of human causes. We've understood this very, very well for a long, long time. The person who first put carbon dioxide in a laboratory and measured whether it absorbed in the infrared did so in the 1850s. 1850s, 150 years ago. So this is not something brand new. The first person that tried to make a model, a theoretical, you might say, model of how much that would affect the climate did so in the 1890s. So this is old stuff. It wasn't invented by Al Gore. It wasn't dreamed up by somebody last week. It's established science, you might say. It's very, very firmly founded. There's no doubt that we're increasing carbon dioxide. It's been measured. In fact, the person who did the measurement, Charles David Keeling, was a professor here at Scripps. He died in 2005, but he began measurements in 1958. And we've seen the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere go up very substantially. We're not talking about a little tiny bit. It's gone up a lot. Because carbon dioxide goes up, it warms the Earth because it makes the blanket thicker. As the Earth warms, more water vapor evaporates into the atmosphere, and the water vapor is itself a heat-trapping gas. So the carbon dioxide has the role of both heating and humidifying the atmosphere, and because it's wetter, it's also, again, more heat-trapping.
This world map video shows dramatic climate changes. Watch how the blue, the lower temperatures of 100 years ago, have been replaced in recent years by higher temperatures, as shown here in the yellow, orange, and red colors.
There are many ways in which mankind is affecting the environment. And the main way in which human activities are affecting the climate is that we are putting more gases into the atmosphere that trap heat. These are the so-called greenhouse gases.
As sunlight passes through the atmosphere and gets absorbed at the surface of the Earth, the climate system gets its energy. The Earth gets rid of heat by radiating at a different wavelength from the sun in the infrared part of the light spectrum. Those same gases in the atmosphere that let the sunlight through are partially opaque. They trap the heat that the Earth is trying to radiate away and keep the Earth warmer than it would otherwise be. This Arctic ice video shows how the area of the Arctic sea ice at the annual minimum, which occurs in September of every year, has shrunk over the satellite era 1979 to the present. That area covered by ice last year in September was about half of what it was around 30 years ago in September.
And if you add more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, which we're doing because it comes out of your tailpipe when you burn gasoline, it comes out of the smokestack of a power plant when it burns oil or coal to make electricity. 80+% of the energy that the world makes comes from burning coal and oil and natural gas. We're dependent on these so-called fossil fuels. And so every time we burn them, we produce carbon dioxide. There are secondary sources of carbon dioxide, and the most important one is changes in land use. If we chop down a forest, then the wood eventually decays or gets burned, and the carbon in it becomes CO2 and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
Deep in the Osa region of Costa Rica, the O2 for Life Foundation has a 500-acre reserve. The San Diego-based nonprofit's mission is to educate people about the rainforest and protect that land, which is considered one of the most biodiverse areas.
O2 for Life can't do the whole job itself, but what it does is very important because, for example, the rainforest has many, many valuable aspects. It does lots of things for us. For example, it provides habitat, and it's also a source of pharmaceuticals. You know, there's things to discover. There's a tremendous amount of diversity of life in the rainforest. There's many ways to do that. But in a straightforward, simple sense of what does it do about the CO2 problem, forests, and tropical rainforests especially, take up carbon dioxide. That's what photosynthesis is. We slow the rate of climate change by limiting the amount of carbon dioxide that we emit into the atmosphere. There's no silver bullet. There's no one way to do that that magically slows it down enough tomorrow morning. So although there's no silver bullet, there's a lot of silver buckshot. There's a lot of things people can do. There are things individuals can do, and since we 7 billion of us plus are all doing these things, then if all 7 billion people made an effort, especially the people in the rich developed countries that are producing the most of these gases, then we could do a great deal. So for example, many of the things you do also have side benefits. They're things you'd want to do anyway. Suppose you could trade in your car today for a car that sipped half as much gas, got double the fuel economy, or a quarter, quadruple the fuel economy. or didn't use gas at all, but still looked the same, drove the same, cost the same. Why wouldn't you do it? Because it has a lot of benefits besides helping the climate. It puts money in your pocket, it reduces the smog where you live, it reduces American dependence on foreign oil, and so on and so on. Beyond that, I think it's a question of moving the world in an effective and efficient way away from fossil fuels towards alternative sources of energy. It is feasible to power a great deal of the world on renewable sources, on sun and wind and water. I think there's a great deal that can be done in the near term to move the world off fossil fuels and towards renewables. There's also interesting research on being able to store the carbon dioxide instead of emitting it into the atmosphere. We're using the Earth as an open sewer. It's a free dump. You don't pay anything when you dump stuff into the atmosphere. So from economic terms, it's an externality. The price you pay for your electricity doesn't reflect the true cost because you're not paying for the damage that the byproducts like carbon dioxide do. And there are many more than climate damage too, of course. Air pollution is another, acidification of the ocean is another. These are really heavy costs that we pay for the enormous benefits, the cheap and abundant energy that we've had from fossil fuels. So a lot depends on what happens to the large developing countries, China, India, Brazil, Russia, for example, because if they follow the Western model, if they follow the model of the already developed world, and use the huge sources of fossil fuels, especially coal, which they have, then climate change will become extremely severe.
The simpler you can make your life, the healthier and the happier you're going to be. And that means you have to have a well-rounded perspective. You have to experience other cultures and know how other people live and share what you have.
Ryan is an artist with a passion for helping groups like the O2 for Life Foundation. He's concerned about the earth, so he created this artwork for the posters and t-shirts which are being sold to help raise funds to preserve the rainforest.
The point of having a preserve is not going in and changing anything, but to leaving it the way it is and just protecting it so that future generations can enjoy it. It's not something that you can enforce codes upon. It's not something that you can govern, and you know, it's just supposed to be free. The mask has a very aggressive look to it, you know, and really the mask that was done is reflective of the indigenous masks that the natives created. Art is wild and free, and that sometimes you may create something that is not going to be accepted by others, and sometimes everyone's going to accept it. And I think people just need to accept themselves as they are and do what feels good to them in their heart, and usually that's a good thing.
69.
Well-known rock and roll photographer Henry Diltz knows a thing or two about feeling good. He spent time with and photographed some of the most legendary icons in rock and roll.
Crosby, Stills, Nash sitting on the couch. We did Morrison Hotel. We ended up doing Jackson Browne's first album, the Eagles' first album, and many, many album covers.
Henry has traveled the world with his cameras. He was the only commissioned photographer to photograph the original Woodstock. His stories about celebrities and events are intriguing and timeless, but what's most charming is his caring do-good philosophy about people and the earth.
Gotta love one another and try to help each other instead of, you know, instead of all the stuff that goes on, you know. All the greedy people trying to claw their way to the top and get more than the other guy. That's not the purpose of life, you know. We should all be happy and well taken care of, you know. I mean, that's the potential of living on this great planet.
At nearly 75 years old, Henry is giving back and helping foundations like O2 for Life. The Morrison Hotel Gallery that he co-founded donated one of his famous photographs to the O2 for Life Foundation for its auction. The history behind the photograph adds to its character.
David Crosby, Stephen Stills, and Graham Nash were three sort of folk musician friends of mine. They became this amazing supergroup with great harmony. They needed a picture. They had no pictures whatsoever. So one day we drove around West Hollywood, just jumping out of the car here and there to take photos to see what we could get. And Graham had seen this old house with a couch outside. He said, it's a couple of blocks over that way, and we found it. They jumped out, jumped on the couch. We took a few pictures, As usual, my partner Gary said, back up, get the whole house. So that was the other thing he always said, besides keep shooting, was always back up, get the whole thing. So I got the whole house, and then we went to a clothing store and took pictures. We took pictures on the street. You know, we spent the whole afternoon shooting. So that wasn't evident as the picture at the time, but then we had the slideshow, and boy, that picture really stood out. Except there was one problem. In the couple of days after we took the picture, they decided on their name, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. At first they were going to be maybe Stills, Nash, and Crosby, but they decided Crosby, Stills, and Nash sounded better. So we looked at that picture, but they're backwards. They're actually Nash, Stills, and Crosby in the picture. So there was some talk of flipping the picture over, but then Stephen would be playing the guitar on the wrong side, so people would see that. So I said, let's just go back. You know, we know where it is. It'll take 5 minutes. You'll just jump on the couch, the right order. And so we all got in the car and drove back a couple of days later, and the house was gone. And the couch. It was just bulldozed and a pile of sticks in the back of the lot. And they built a parking lot there. To this day, it is still a parking lot right there. So that became the cover, and even though they're sitting backwards, it didn't seem to bother anybody.